Hey, Coach, we really appreciate the time. I know that you partnered with USAA, and I do want to start with this, the Army-Navy
Okay.
game, and you guys are and we're going now. Sometimes people will not think we're interviewing, Coach, but we don't have good radio voices or podcast voices. We talk like
All
normal.
right.
So and it's gotten we've had to edit out because some of our friends are coaches, and they'll be saying stuff like off-the-wall stuff, and they're like, oh, I didn't know we were going. So we're going. So,
All right.
all right, good to see you. So let's talk. What, your dad served in the military? Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. My dad served 32 years in the United States Army, Chief Warrant Officer. Our dad was one of those, lifers, and he just traveled the world and brought the family with him. We were in Germany, we were in Panama, we were in Fort Meade, Maryland, we were in Fort Lewis, Washington, but our home base was always Fort Ord, California.
How do you feel like that affected you as a coach? The discipline that he lived and taught you, how much of that came through you to your players?
I think it came through a lot. One of the biggest things you learn right off the bat is chain of command. How everything kind of is just structured from the top and works its way down. And you also learn responsibility. One of the really cool lessons I learned from my dad was when I first got the job as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Dad and I were talking, and he never told me anything or what to do or how to do things, anything like that. But he did give me this one message that I thought was really cool. He and I were in the garage of their house, and we were talking about it. He said, Ronnie, I want you to understand something. He said, listen, you're now in charge. You're now the man. He said, understand this. When all hell's breaking loose, right in the middle of combat, and all hell is breaking loose, mortars are landing, firing, people are firing their weapons. Guys are all over the place, screaming, yelling. Everybody turns and looks at the commander. If he's in control, if he's in charge, everybody calms down and they work off of him. He said, never forget that. If you're out of control, your players will feed off of you and they'll be out of control. If you're calm and cool in the motor pool, that's one of his favorite sayings, calm and cool in the motor pool, hey, they'll be calm, they'll be cool, and they'll play for you. And I never forgot that little lesson he gave me.
Did you feel like if there was a game-winning field goal or a missed field goal or a big play, like you still need to remain calm because people could see, or even like somebody like hanging their head, like a quarterback hanging their head? Did you talk to them about the same type of thing?
Absolutely. That was one of the things I tried to get across, especially the quarterback position or the middle linebackers. Guys, hey, everybody looks at you. Everybody feeds off of your energy. You drop them shoulders, they'll drop their shoulders. You keep that chest up high, they'll keep their chest up high. So just understand that everybody is watching you and everybody around you is a reflection of the way you handle things.
We have friends that have played against you and that have played for you in different capacities, and they really liked you and said you were a player's, to them, they defined you as a player's coach, which I would not think if I came from a military background, I would be much of a player's coach. How were you able to balance that where you were such a disciplinarian, but also the players still really liked you?
Well, I think, Bobby, the biggest thing more than anything else was I played the game too. I had 9 years of NFL experience, played for the Chicago Bears on the 1985 championship team, and I think that gives me credibility. It didn't make me necessarily a better coach than anybody else, but what it did was it gave me perspective. I have a different perspective than a lot of people do, and that is I played the game, I've coached the game, now I'm doing some broadcast stuff. I may coach again, but I have a perspective a lot of people don't have. They don't look at it from a different set of eyes like I do.
You may coach again. I'm not going to let that nugget just swim by, Coach, because there will be a lot of positions that are open. Are you already starting to get calls just gauging interest?
Well, I do know that, I have an agency that I'm working with, and they, for the most part, are the ones handling it. I'm just kind of staying low right now. You never really want to get it out there until it's time. And so we'll see what happens at the end of the season. We'll go from there.
Did you do the Super Bowl shuffle?
No, that's a great story. They filmed the Super Bowl shuffle the day after we got beat by Miami. It was our only loss that year. We finished the season. We were 18-1, but our only loss was the Monday night loss to Miami in Miami, and it was it was a heartbreak. It really was. But what happened was on the flight home. See, back in the day, Monday night didn't start till 9 p.m. because they wanted the West Coast to be able to watch it at 6 p.m. So you start the game at 9. Game runs long. We don't finish the game till after midnight on the East Coast. So typically after your game, you shower up, you head to the airport, and you fly back. Well, we were flying back. Willie Galt was part of the group that was putting together the Super Bowl Shuffle, and he was going up and down the aisles of the airplane trying to get guys to show up. And if you really watch it, you'll notice that really there's only about 24, 25 guys showed up in person. Several guys didn't show up. I was one of them. Not that it mattered, but Jim McMahon didn't show up. Walter Payton wasn't there originally. Jim McMahon, William Perry. And so what they had to do with those guys was they had to blue screen those guys in. So if you really watch it, and you'll notice that certain guys were blue screened in, and that was all because we had just lost, and it's not like you wanted to go do something like that after a loss. But still, they had 20 some odd guys show up. They did the most of the filming that day, and then they captured the guys they really needed later on.
Do you regret not showing up now?
I wish I had. That thing has gone gold and platinum, and all the way on down, and it still lives today. It still lives today, and that's the thing people understand. That '85 team was the first rock and roll Super Bowl. It was the 20th anniversary of it. It was one of those things that just, it definitely does live on and on. It's crazy, but that just shows you how iconic and how powerful that team was.
I'm going to talk about the Army-Navy game in just a second with you because I know, again, you're personally involved. But before I get to that, we talk about coaching. Would you coach college?
I'd consider it, but it'd have to be the right place, the right fit. My last 4 years coaching in the NFL was very difficult, and it was a lot had to do with some of the stuff that really doesn't revolve around football itself. There are a lot of outside things that I had to work through for the team, but I really love the game. I love coaching. I've never been on the college level, so I'm not quite sure what I would expect. So I really have to, if the opportunity came up, I really have to think about that. I really would.
I got a couple teams I'd like for you to coach, so let me know if that's you. I'm a pretty big booster in a couple places, Coach. We're just a call away. Me and you, we can do this. I do want to talk about the Army-Navy game for a second because, again, with your history and your dad in the military, you're working with USAA. What is your relationship with them, and why is this game so important?
Well, USAA, I've been a member for over, since 1982, I believe it was. I've inherited from my father. And I've been a member ever since. They handle all our family's insurances and stuff like that. And what they've been involved in supporting the military because they were started with the military in mind. Their history goes back that a group of military officers got together and said, we need to be able to have insurance that we can take with us, travel with us, transfer with us, and then pass on to our kids. And so they started USAA. And the whole thing behind it is that it serves the military community. I've been very fortunate to be involved with them. I was the NFL Salute to Service Award winner coming after the 2022 season, which was really a cool thing. And it's also because my father served, and when we were in Panama, the one thing I remember is the USO and how they would travel all over the United States, all over the world, and put on these events for the military families. And just, that was the first time I ever saw anybody give back to the military. And so it kind of touched me. And so as I got older and got into the NFL, I got involved in doing stuff for the military, being around them, then go to Charlotte, for the Carolina Panthers, and come to find out that the USO was born in North Carolina. And so my wife and I, one of the charities that we worked with, one of the people that we helped fundraise for and do things for was the USO of North Carolina.
Army-Navy game is also just awesome. I'm glad it has its own week. It's just, it is like, Kyle Field this last weekend. It was A&M in Texas, and that place was going berserk. And I'm an Arkansas guy, but to watch that place, but it's like that every year in that game. It's that same environment because regardless of what the records are, and actually they're both pretty good this year. So
very good.
And you're going to be at that game?
Yes. I was invited to be part of some of the ceremonies on Friday and Saturday. So I most certainly will be there. And it's just an opportunity, again, to give back. It was kind of neat because of some of the people that I've been around. I got an opportunity to go to West Point last spring. Me and Joe Torre went there, and we talked about leadership, and we talked about dealing with hostile media as well. It was a lot of fun, and it was really neat to be around the cadets and really just, when you see these young men and women, you feel very good about our country because you know who these people are. And they do really, truly do represent the finest. And I can imagine it's the same way at the Naval Academy. It's the same way at the Air Force Academy. I haven't had a chance to be at those two places, but I will tell you, if they're anything like like West Point, we're in a very good place as far as people in this world.
You have a Walter Payton jersey behind you, and I
Yes.
would read stories about Walter Payton and taking like the soles of his shoes out so he could feel the ground as he
Yes.
ran. Did you ever see that for yourself?
Yes, I did. One of the things I used to do, and I did it, and I kind of regretted it a little bit, was I would run that hill that he used to run with him every now and then. He would get me and say, "Come on, Chico, we got to go run some hills." So I would go run with him, and man, I'll tell you what, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Just watching him work out, watching him prepare for the season, and he did some of this stuff in season as well. People don't realize that he kept himself in tip-top shape always.
He a different time, obviously, but running backs, they ran hard and they ran a lot, and
Yeah,
one back was the three down back, and
yeah,
you basically had one. Now, they don't even want backs getting hit a lot in college because they're like every time he gets hit, that's one less hit he takes in the NFL, and he has nothing on the tires. That wasn't the case back then, and I would compare it to baseball and pitchers now, where they put everybody on pitch counts, and there weren't near as many arm injuries 25 years ago because people didn't know possibly what they should or shouldn't do. Do you feel like with running backs, it's the same as like a pitcher with pitch counts, and maybe we're a
A-
little too sensitive?
absolutely, Bobby. You bring up a great point about this, and that is preparing to play sports today has become so specialized that if you're a baseball player, all you ever do is play baseball and you play it year round. If you're a football player, all you do is get ready for football and you play it all year round. When we were kids, and I know when you're a lot younger than me, but I know you probably played all the sports because I grew up playing football, basketball, baseball, tennis, racquetball, swimming. I mean, we did everything. We cross trained. And then when I got into when I went through college football and then got in the NFL, we had two-a-days, and we had two-a-days in pads, and two-a-days in pads lasted for 2 solid weeks. Every day, the same thing. Every day, they hitting, the grind. I think what happened for us, a lot of us, we built up the callousness to the game. You know what I'm saying? We understood the difference between being injured and being hurt. There's a huge difference. And, when you're hurting, you're sore, okay, that's one thing. But man, when you're injured, that's when you do have to take the time off. That's when you do have to go through rehab and get yourself ready to go again. When you're hurt, it's now about maintaining your body and taking care of it. Today, the kids they don't cross train the way that we did back in the day. They do have these pitch counts. They do have these hit counts. They watch the way they practice. You have guys that now they wear the GPS stuff, and based on what the GPS tells you, he's traveled X amount of yards. He's using X amount of force to run. We need to back him up. And I think because of that, we have not built the callousness we need to play these games today in our young people.
I want to ask you about Carolina for a second because you were gone before it seemingly turned bad, and it's bad. There are from Baker to we can go even Baker talking this past week to Bryce Young on the field, and you kind of read their lips a little bit, and it's not
Yeah.
been. You were there, and I think David Tepper's the one that came in when you were coaching the team, right? And
Right.
doesn't seem to me from 10,000 feet up that he's running an organization there that is doing anything productive at all. What is happening in Carolina?
I think the biggest thing more than anything else is Mr. Tepper's learning, and he's growing with his organization. I was fortunate. I was with Jerry Richardson. Mr. Richardson played back in the day. He played for the Baltimore Colts when they were the Colts. Played on their championship team, and then went from the championship team and started his life in business. He becomes the owner, and as he went through it, he grew and developed his culture the way he wanted it. I think what you're going through right now in Carolina is the same thing as that growth and learning to develop and have a culture. What I will say is I do like who they have now as their head coach. I think Dave Canellis is one of the really good, young, fine minds in the NFL. He's a good offensive mind. He's done a great job. I think this year, one of the things he had to do was he benched Bryce Young at the beginning of the season. And now Bryce has come back and he's had an opportunity to play. He's playing pretty doggone well. I think that was one of the really good moves this year that coaches have made. I really do. I think taking Bryce, setting him down, giving him a chance to watch Andy Dalton, who's a very veteran guy. He watched Andy. He worked with Andy. Andy was terrific with the young man, too. And I think what you're seeing now is the results of a kid getting a chance to take a step back, watch how it's done, work with the guy that's done it before. And at the same time, I think Coach Canales also has figured out some of the better plays to use for the young man. You're starting to see some growth in that player, and I think you're seeing a little bit of growth in that team, especially on the field.
Yeah, he looks great. Like again, even this last week, they lost the game. There's a fumble to him, but he threw for almost 302 touchdowns. That's like 3 games in a row where he's not going to be extremely dynamic all the time because he does not have the weapons. But man, he looks good and at times dynamic, and I think that's what they're looking for, right?
Absolutely. And the thing that's real interesting, too, is you see some of the stuff that Dave Canales is doing. Dave was in Seattle with Russell Wilson, who wasn't a very big guy. Now, Russell's a little bit more stout than he is. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a little bit more of what they used to do in Seattle being implemented in the offense that they use. I think Sean Payton's done a tremendous job where he is with Bo Nix, but he also did a tremendous job with Drew Brees. Drew's a shorter guy as well, but what he did was he made sure he had an offensive line that was very stout up front. His 2 guards and center were really stout. There was no push, no penetration, which allowed Drew to take his drop and then step in and drive the ball. Gave him a chance to see through the passing lanes because they made sure they had the right kind of players around him. And that truly has helped him an awful lot. So to me, I start watching, Carolina, and I'm seeing what Dave Canales is doing and what he's trying to implement on the offense. And I go, wow, this dude's doing a hell of a job. So I really do think he's one of the really good young minds right now in the NFL.
I have 4 final questions for you. I felt like when you went into Washington, and again, this is me from 10,000 feet up, and I know you look at me and you're like, you probably played linebacker. I didn't, coach. I didn't play in the NFL. I know I looked intimidating, but I felt like that institution with Dan Snyder was in such disarray. They wanted to bring someone in that could kind of refocus the entire – from all the way up as far as you could reach to all the way down to personnel. Did you feel that was your job when you went in there? Did you feel like, and what was the ceiling you thought when you went into Washington?
Well, I thought there was a lot of potential because a lot of people forget we came in and we won the division our first year, in spite of the fact it wasn't a good division, but we won it. But going forward, there were so many things that we had to deal with, so many things that were outside the realm of football that we had to deal with and try and get corrected. One thing that happened too is, my personal battle with cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer just before training camp started my first year there. And, that was part of what I had to deal with for the first couple of months in the season. But once we got past that and you could see the guys starting to come together, started to play. What it also helped me make me truly realize was how important having a quarterback is. My first 7 years in Carolina, I had Cam Newton, who was about as good as anybody at the time, took us to a Super Bowl. We had 4. We were the first team in that division to win 3 straight division championships. I mean, when you have a guy like that, and that guy is your guy, it gives you every opportunity to be successful. You go around and look throughout the league. Coaches that have had that have been very, very productive. Andy Reid, he had Donovan McNabb initially when he starts in Philadelphia. Then he comes out and he's got Patrick Mahomes, arguably one of the best. Sean McDermott doing what he's doing up in Buffalo. I mean, that's another great, with Josh Allen. That just shows you how important it is. But sometimes when you're looking for that guy constantly, and that's what we did, my whole 4 years in Washington, we constantly looked for a guy that could help carry the team. And when you don't have that guy, you struggle. Now they got Jaden Daniels. And I'm telling you, I think what Dan Quinn's doing there is really great. Some really good things with that young man and that team. So it's been kind of neat to watch what's been going on in the NFL this year.
3 questions left. When it comes to quarterbacks, we're seeing so much. It matters where you land, who's coaching you, what system you're in, right? Because you can draft a quarterback that just doesn't match the system. Who is a quarterback you think was just not in the right place, but probably had so much potential, but because of possibly where he was drafted and the system he was put into was not able to reach his full potential?
I think Sam Darnold. I mean, right now, when you see what's going on in Minnesota, Kevin Connell's done a great job. He has reestablished who that young man should be as a quarterback in the NFL. He's got a really solid college career, starts off in the NFL with the Jets, I believe, struggled mightily, didn't seem to fit the system, bounced around for a few years. Then all of a sudden he goes up to Minnesota, and look what's happened. Look how he's playing with confidence. Look how he's got that team right in the middle of the playoff run. I mean, I think that's a great example of a guy being put in a great system. You could say the same thing for Baker Mayfield. Bounced around his first few years. Now all of a sudden he ended up in Tampa Bay in a system that really seems to fit him. And look how he's played. He's played well, and he's really, truly leading that team right now.
I was going through some data. It looks like you scored 1 touchdown But you weren't really a touchdown guy. You played defense. Do you have the ball? Did you keep the ball?
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. It's funny. I scored the touchdown. I spiked the ball, and then I realized, what the hell are you doing? I went and chased it down, grabbed it, took it from the ball boy, and walked back to the sideline with it.
Yeah, that's good. Final question. Whenever the nickname Riverboat Ron came about, and obviously it's, I feel like it was in Carolina when I heard it first. Did you feel like you were a guy that pushed the limits, or were you just being you? Like, I don't know. Like, I know when I go to the casino sometimes I'm like, I'm going hard. I'm going to be a little more. Did you feel like you were a gambler, or were you just playing what you felt?
I was playing what I felt, but this is what's interesting now. Riverboat Ron came about because of John Madden, okay? After my second year in Carolina, I had this crazy record of being 3-13 in games decided by one score or less. And at the end of the year, like I did my first year, my second year, I sit down with the owner, Jerry Richardson, and we talk about what just happened, how the season went, and what needed to happen to go forward. And one of the things I said to Mr. Richardson, I said, I really think I need a mentor, and I'd like to have your permission to reach out and find a mentor. And he kind of starts to chuckle to me, and he goes, I want you to take a look at this index card. He slides this index card across to me, and there's a phone number on it. And under the phone number, the name is John Madden. I started laughing, and I said, Mr. Richardson, that's who I was going to ask for permission to call. I wanted to talk to Coach Madden. And, sure enough, Mr. Richardson looks at me and goes, he's expecting your call. So I call Coach Madden. We start talking about it. And one of the things that he says to me, he says, hey, I understand you're 3-13 by games, decided by a score or less. Why don't you go back and look and see if there's something different you could have done? Well, I took that, oh, hey, you need to do a report. So I went back, I looked at those games. I wrote this 20-page report about, things that happened in the game, how I could have done things differently. So I go out, I visit with him. I go to Pleasanton, California, where his home office is. Go into his office, and it's like, oh my God, it was like the Hall of Fame. It was like the Raiders Hall of Fame. Everything he had was all about the Raiders. It was really a neat place to be. It really was. And we had a great conversation. We're talking, and finally I said, "Well, I have that report that you wanted me to do." So, hey, you see?
Sounds like my house. Sounds like my house, Coach. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, she wants to go out and chase squirrels, and she's kind of pissed off at me right now. Give me a minute, please, okay? We'll be right back. Come here. Good girl. So anyways, he says to me, what'd you learn? I said, well, I learned I kicked here and I punted there. And what it made me realize was I was doing what was safe, okay? When I should have gone for it on fourth down, get the first down and end the game, I didn't. And so he made me realize I needed to start thinking through it. And he says to me, he says, Ron, you've played enough. You've coached enough to know certain situations dictate you take a chance. And that's when I learned. So fast forward, get into my third season, we're playing Minnesota in Minnesota. And opening series, I go for it twice on fourth down. In fact, we score on a 4th and 3 on a shovel pass, okay? On a shovel pass, we score. I did it again later in the game. I went for it on fourth down, get the first down. So after the game, they go up to the fans. They start saying, boy, Coach Rivera, what do you think about him, going for it on fourth down? And, oh, that's great. It's cool. And finally, they get to this one guy. Says, what do you think of Coach Rivera going for it on fourth down? He goes, oh, my God, are you kidding? Oh, Coach Rivera's out there like a riverboat gambler. I'll tell you, that old Riverboat Ron, that was something else. And that's how it started.
It's stuck. Coach, we really appreciate the time. And this is not a question, but just a very quick story that I'm happy to share a lot of times. But a couple of years ago, before they limited the field, because last year they limited it, but I played in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and I was very excited because
right on.
It was the first time that they thought I was famous. So I was like, this is cool. So I went out and got to play, and it was very brief, but I saw you, and you were there. This is a couple years ago, and I was like, I don't want to go bother Coach Rivera, but I've always been a massive fan of you and just your story and sharing your story. And I said, hey, Coach Rivera, and you sat and talked to me and my friend Eddie for like 10 minutes, and it was like nobody else was in the room. And I tell people this story all the time. And to be able to tell you this back, that you just like focused and talked football to people that you didn't know if we knew football or soccer, but you were so kind to us for no reason whatsoever. And I just want to personally say thank you for that 10 minutes or so. It's meant the world, and just appreciate you today, and congrats. And I can't wait for you to coach again, because whatever that is, I'll be rooting for you, Coach.
I appreciate it. I mean, thanks for having me on. And again, just so you know, looking forward to the Army-Navy game. I appreciate the association I have with USAA.
USAA sponsored a game since 2009. Army-Navy game December 14th. Coach Ron Rivera. Thanks, Coach. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Bobby.
See you, Coach.